Right, seeing how we have apparently now voted to leave the European Union, hopefully this means that people will be more enthusiastic about buying plants that are produced in this country, let alone produced in Somerset. Now, we've always been great proponents of actually producing plants here as opposed to importing them from overseas. And there are lots of reasons why we shouldn't import plants from overseas, particularly from the Mediterranean. There is at the moment a disease called Xylella, which is killing all of the olive trees, well, killing a large quantity of olive trees in Italy and southern France. It's also capable of killing a huge range of other plants. If a nursery or a garden centre imports a lorry load of topiarised box plants or olive trees or something from the continent that are carrying that disease, and it's not noticed, and it gets out into the native plants or any plants in the UK, it's going to be absolutely devastating. So, you know, in my opinion, there is no reason to import things apart from very, very occasionally to get stock to propagate from. Now, we need to keep stock plants to actually take the cuttings from to bring on the next generation of plants or plants for the following year. So there's a couple of penstemons that we've got sitting here waiting to have some cuttings taken of them. We only need about 3 or 4 plants of each variety to get up to 100 cuttings. There are also other plants that have been reared on actually by another British nursery, I should hasten to add here. These were grown from seed at a nursery in Sussex. They're Astrantia, and they're waiting to be potted up. And there's 1 or 2 other things like some thalictrums there. And there's a rather interesting Lysomachia at the back here, which has a white spiky flower, which we haven't quite got round to potting up yet. And then once we've potted these plants up into 2-litre pots, they have to go outside and they sit around the place until they're rooted, at which point we put a white or blue bed label in saying that they're ready for sale. This is a 2-litre Eryngium agavifolium. It's similar to, it's the same family as the rest of the sea hollies, and that is yours for £3.50, including the VAT here. Right, so we'll just have a little look at 1 or 2 of these plants. There's an Achillea at the end here, which is called Paprika, and they're fully in flower at the moment. Very, very strong red flower with a yellow centre. Then next we've got some Primula bulliana, which are nearly going over now. Lovely candelabra type flower, which has been flowering for weeks and weeks and weeks. Coming on a little bit further, we've got things like this Amsonia, which has got these interesting little starry flowers on. It's a tuberous perennial, unusual. Admittedly, for a lot of the year, it doesn't really do anything very interesting, but you know, a lot of these plants, the whole point is that many of them do something very interesting for maybe not a very long while. A little bit like this Asclepias, which is over here. These are about to flower. They're next to a load of Campanula laudanana, which is another lovely plant. All of these are £3.50, and all of these have been grown here. Some were bought in from British nurseries. The Asclepias we bought in to pot up, but the laudanana grown here. Right, the little blue flower that Carrie's just got the camera on at the moment is called Felicia. We don't know exactly what variety it is. Somebody's given us this plant. As far as we understand it, they're not supposed to be hardy or perennial really, but this one has been both, so we've taken some cuttings off of it, and we'll see if we can get them to come along. But anyway, in my hands here I've got another example of a plant which for the vast majority of the time you might look at and think, not very interesting. But I mean, look at this. It's called Itia Henry's Garnet, and it has a smell like honeycomb. Thankfully we're in the tunnel at the moment and it's a bit overcast, so the bees are not that interested, but for the most part they are absolutely fascinated by this plant. Okay, so and then this is where it all starts. This is the first batch of cuttings that we've done this year. Each one of these trays holds 84 plugs. and there's oh, I don't know how many here, there's quite a few, but we'll do something in the realms of about 15,000 cuttings or so, something like that. Generally speaking, we expect to get about 60% of them work just what we call cold on the ground like this, no particular sort of special treatment. This is a cutting of an Artemisia. Look at that, got a nice little set of roots on it. It's only been in there for about 10 days. That plant has been grown here, it's been propagated here, and hopefully some lucky person will be able to come and buy it here.
Okay.
We've potted up 1 or 2 hydrangeas into 5-litre pots, just to sort of force them on a little bit and make them look absolutely at their best. This is a variety called Preziosa, which has a flower which starts off a sort of creamy yellow, almost white colour, and then as the flower develops it goes to a much stronger pink, and then as it goes on a little bit longer the flowers begin to fade over, and eventually they'll sort of go a rusty pinky splattered colour, which is quite interesting.
Okay.
This is a relation of the honeysuckle family called Divila splendens. The bees love it. It has a small tubular yellow flower, no particular great fragrance on it, but it's a really popular plant with the bees. It's a good border filler. The foliage goes sort of bronzy as the year goes on. Absolutely fantastic. Then we've got some spirea. This is just snowmound. They've absolutely flowered their hearts out for weeks and weeks and weeks, and now they're just about over. But that's an excellent plant. There's some buddleia here that are just coming to flower. Interesting plant here. This is a Prostanthera or Prostanthera. Don't know how people like to pronounce it. It's one of the mint bush family. The foliage has got a lovely sort of fragrant minty smell to it. Again, you know, delightful flower for several weeks. You can grow this as a fairly large shrub, or you can prune it to keep it small. There's lots of other Prostantheras that we've got here, or Prostantheras. And then we've got some fantastic hydrangea Amy Pasquale. This is about as tall as it gets. These plants were potted up into 5-litre pots last autumn, and we haven't pruned them back intentionally to really let them go for it. And then on the end here we've got some Abutilon Ashford Red, this particular one. It's got the larger flower. There's another variety called Nabob which we have, which is very similar with a slightly smaller flower. The bees absolutely love these. They're easy access for them. They've got a lot of pollen in there and a lot of nectar. Superb plant for a big container, put outside over the summer and then bring it in. These haven't been as spoilt as they should have been. I mean, if you'd given them lashings of tomato food, they'd be dark green and lush and all the rest of it, but they've just been sitting out here actually most of the winter. Right, another plant which I favour highly, and yet you hardly ever see anywhere, is Deutzia, or Deutzia, however you like to pronounce it. There are lots and lots of different varieties. They flower at different times. Calamifolia, Ningpoensis start flowering very early in the year. They've long since stopped flowering now, but there are other varieties like Corymbifolia, and then this is one called Lavender Time, and this is one called Hookeriana or Hookerianum, not too sure, can't quite remember. They all have a slightly different habit, slightly different flowering times. Absolutely glorious, and yet you very rarely see them. In looking around, we've got plants which might be a little unusual to some people. There's things like the Hydrangea quercifolia, or the oak-leafed hydrangea. Stupendous flower when it comes into flower. It has a big white fluffy hydrangea flower on it, and these big oak leaf shaped leaves which in the autumn go dark rusty red, a little bit like the colour of the leaf on this magnolia. This is Magnolia stellata, actually a red or rose form, this particular one. Then there's another evergreen shrub which is always useful, which is Aleria macrodonta. turns into quite a big bush if you let it, but you can prune it. It has lots and lots and lots of white daisy flowers on it. All kinds of interesting things that you might not come across every day in every garden. Well, thanks for that. If you're a member of a gardening club, or you have a local allotment association or something or another like that, please get in contact with us, and we can send out either some cards or our pretty little flyer which has got a lovely picture on the back, or you can find us in the Somerset Specialist Nurseries pamphlet. Thank you.